Hello and welcome to Unhinged Curiosity. It feels a little bit strange jumping back into the podcast world after spending a good 8 months offline. It seems like an eternity, and it's something that I've dearly missed after podcasting for 4 years, and had a great time doing it on the previous podcast that I hosted, and I couldn't wait to get back. So this new podcast is called Unhinged Curiosity, and I guess the goal of this podcast is to try and get you to explore your limitations, possibilities, and beliefs in order to self-develop. And I'm going to do that hopefully by myself, by experts, by guests in the future. But it's mainly going to start off as a solo podcast. And I guess for me, the point and the premise of this is for me to be selfish, for me to explore the next parts of my life. And if you guys are going through something similar in your lives and are going through a journey, then hopefully this podcast can be a voice in your corner, a help along the way, a holding hand in the dark. And that kind of leads me on to the first episode, which is going to be the 10 biggest lessons I've learned in 2025. So I've gathered some notes. I've been thinking quite deeply about these topics and the things I've learned this year. It's probably been one of the most transformational years of my life. And it's a funny thing. I was thinking about this on a walk this morning, is that a lot of people think and believe that you go along life at a trajectory which you're either progressing or maintaining. And when something big or impactful happens, that we're just going to kind of slow down. When it's not the case, what often tends to happen is that we go through this period of where we decrease in output, we decrease in productivity and performance. And we might do that. We might be on that trajectory for a little while, but then we hit this bottom out point. We hit this point where we almost hit a springboard where we traject back up, and we often go past that point of where we were before, and we surpass that and get better. And that's what can happen. I guess it's like having a fizzy can of Coke that you shake up, you open, and it changes direction. It changes the way that the can opens because it's had a shake. It's been made. It's been changed. It's been forced into a different direction. And I guess that's what happens in life sometimes. And I'm very grateful at the place when I'm recording this in Australia at the moment. Hence why I've got a bit of a sweaty face. If you guys are watching on YouTube or Spotify video, that's why. It would also mean a lot to me if you guys could subscribe to the channel wherever you're listening to or watching this, because it's going to be a journey. It's going to be a journey for me. It's going to be a journey for you guys, hopefully, who are going to join me as well. This is going to also be a health and fitness podcast, but I do want to tap into the main sort of agenda, what the podcast is going to be about, which is essentially going to be the balancing act of what we all face of productivity and self-development versus being content, because we can't really be one of the other at the same time. When we're on this journey of self-development, we're literally wanting to be better, which means we think of ourselves as not good enough at the moment. And when we are content and we've got gratitude, often we're not self-development, we're content in where we're at. So I'm looking at this from my own perspective of how do I get both in my life? How do I get the balance? How do I, in certain chapters, self-develop, and how in certain places can I also be content about where I am now? So the first one and the first lesson I've drawn up for the podcast within my show notes is that anything is possible, even the worst possible, but you can find a way out. Now, I've probably felt more stress and anxiety and change over the past year than I ever have before, and there's been a lot of conflicted desires and beliefs, and there's choices that have got to be made, and you have to be able to, when these things change and happen, you've got to be able to stand on your own 2 feet and make the best decision possible. And what I was just explaining then is that you will go through whatever this point in your life is. It might be a challenge, it might be a fitness challenge, it might be high rocks. For me, in 2023, it was the world record that I completed, where I completed the furthest farmer's carry over 24 hours with 100 pounds and became the world record holder for that. And one of the things that you notice is that from pain can come great self-development. And the issue that I've then found and have found in my fitness journey and in my life with this is almost becoming addicted to that pain, because I understand that essentially moves me into the next version of me. It helps me level up, and it can be a vicious circle. And this can be a vicious circle for a lot of people self-developing, because essentially when we're looking to continue to get better, there's going to be a sacrifice, there's going to be a pain. And when you are an individual who, whether that be in your fitness journey, whether you're a runner or a high rocks, whatever it may be, it doesn't have to be as drastic as, changes in jobs and relationships and friendships. It can be anything that is in your life, the smallest possible thing. And I think it's something that you need to be wary of and be self-aware of when this happens, because how do we get that balance? How do we do that? It's something that I I still don't know now after going through many different things. And I think the main thing is when you are going through that painful period, like for me with the world record challenge, the biggest thing that I took away from it was I got to 9 hours in and I felt like I tore my bicep. I felt like it was hanging off the bone. And I just thought, you know what? I can't see myself doing this for another 15 hours, but I can take one more step. I can do it for another minute. And that's the thing Jordan Peterson talks about as well. He talks about how the first step in life should be, even before cleaning your room and putting your room in order first, is tidying the first drawer. Because for some people, tidying the whole room might be too much of an ask. Making it to tomorrow might be too much of an ask. Just getting through today might be the small step that you need to take. And that can apply to other things like running or lifting. Going to do 5 workouts a week might be too much. But you might be able to go do 2 or 3. And that's the kind of theory I've really lent into over the past couple of months, is when you're in that period, it's a little bit like a dark tunnel. And when you're in that dark tunnel, you can either pull up a chair and you can sit in that dark tunnel, or you can start to make the uncomfortable, difficult, painful steps towards the light. It's not going to be easy, but it's also not going to be easy. But if you just sit there on that chair and continue to see the end of that tunnel and getting no closer to an end. So that is my lesson number 1, is anything is possible, even the worst. So on to lesson number 2. And this for some people is probably going to sound a little bit strange, but lesson number 2 is I'm going to die. And before you say to me, thanks for pointing out the uber obvious, Ben. It's something that I've been thinking a lot about recently, is death. And to some people that might sound morbid, but there's a lot of research that goes into individuals who think about death and how enlightening it can be to life. Because I guess it makes you think about, there is an end in sight, and it's life is not infinite, it's finite. And that for me helps me live a more fulfilled life now, because I know I've got a limited amount of time to live. It would be like, imagine living up to your 150th birthday and getting 150 candles out and blowing them out for the 150th time. It'd just be like, yeah, I'm all right this year. Don't give me a birthday cake. I've had enough of it. I think that'd start to be the case with life as well. So I'm not scared of it. I think it helps you enjoy those occasions and those occurrences, and helps you pause and think about life a little bit, like I'm doing right now. And the thing that got me thinking about this, I read a book when I was in Australia, because I came over here in December of last year and stayed here till March. I booked 2 weeks and ended up staying for 3 months. Had a great time. Did a lot of soul searching, did a lot of reading. I read this book on masculinity, which is obviously a lot of talk about at the moment. And one of the great quotes, which I've actually written down, and it really struck me, was, every man dies, but not every man lives. Hit me that one. And it's because people can spend a lot of time worried about death and not being present, not being here, which again is about being content and being grateful for things that we have right now. And you just end up being dead before you even die, which is a crazy thing to think. I think there's a lot of people, unfortunately, who go through that. The walking dead, which I think is even worse than death itself. And it's something that really got me thinking about how I spend each day and how I can be grateful and have gratitude for things that maybe in the past I've taken for granted. And to say, we need to fit into a certain pigeonhole or live life under the radar or just survive is really difficult. And this was one of the topics I looked into last year. I know one of a good friend of mine just spoke about this quite a lot, and it's that point in life that a lot of people fall into of and I've been there before with jobs and friendships and relationships where I've been doing something, but the job wasn't bad enough for me to quit. The relationship was just shitty enough for me to stay in it. And this isn't talking about my previous relationship. This is talking about many moons ago. The friendship was kind of okay, but wasn't great. Where I was living was all right, but wasn't great. I think a lot of people exist within that small zone, and this is where it's often better if life obviously is either really good and really great or it's really shit. Because the worse that something is, the more chance there is of you changing something. The more painful something is, the more chance that you're going to get up and change something today. But if it's just like bad enough, you're probably going to just continue to mull your way through it. You're going to continue to sludge through the mud. And that is difficult to be self-aware of. And something that I want you to think about today. And you can grow from these things. You can move on from these things. And, you can't expect to grow unless you move from those relationships and you move from those friendships, because otherwise you're just existence and you're just passing time when time is super precious, and it's such a dangerous thing if you're in that place. And one of the things I've also been super, super mindful of within this space, and I think people do it online quite a lot within the podcast space and the self-development space on Instagram or social media. It's, just quit the job, just leave the relationship. And I think that can be really, really toxic advice, because you shouldn't be given advice if you wouldn't apply it to yourself. That's a logic that I like to live by now when I'm giving people advice, because you could give some advice which could completely just trolley their whole life, seriously harming someone. And this was kind of driven home again by, I listened to, if anyone's not read the book, or even better actually, not downloaded the Audible version of Let Them by Mel Robbins. Wow. So that's some book. She's a great speaker as well. I love Mel Robbins. I've listened to her for a long time, but she was speaking to, I don't know if it was her husband that was on the podcast or whether it was somebody else, but she was talking about how they went through a certain rough patch. And she was saying about sometimes there's going to be people in lifeboats or rafts who are going to come up next to your boat with you and your partner in it, and they're going to tell you things, they're going to advise you things, they're going to try and pull you out of the boat and onto the raft. And sometimes you've got to stay in the boat. You've got to stay in the boat, weather the storm, and you got to communicate. And I think that's where she was talking about, you've got to be careful about the people around you who are in those rafts, the people who are trying to pull you and save you, but are they really trying to save you? Or are they trying to pull you down? Because people don't really want you to be the best version of you. They just want you to be the version of you that best serves them. And that's just an honest opinion for a lot of people until you realize it. So it's just something you've got to be careful about. I mean, on this topic of death, I haven't thought about exactly how I want to die, but I probably want to be in my own bed. I probably want to be in a pair of slippers. I don't really want to be in one of those hospital beds because they're just greedy. How many lives of a hospital bed taken? I preferably want to be in my own bed, and I don't want to be around a plethora of dead bodies, preferably. So I'd also would like to have a pregnancy pillow. I really like sleeping with something between my legs. So if I'm going to die, whoever's there, I'd like a pregnancy pillow. But in a shirt, party up top. No, smart up top, party downstairs. So nothing on downstairs. Probably watching Match of the Day, maybe Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings. But in all seriousness, I probably want my family around me. I probably want the people who I respect, love, and care for, and be rich in memories. Because there's one thing I've learned over the past few months is that the term forever is a phrase that was meant for memories, not people. And I think once you come to terms with that, it makes life a lot easier to deal with. And it also makes life a journey and a vessel of where you pick things up, you pick up memories, you pick up lessons. And that is something that I'd want to share with family in my last dying hours. So I don't know how I'd want to die. Probably at old age. Probably not. Probably not leathered in my own shit. Probably still healthy, hygienic, and got control of my bowels. So that would be the preferences. But yeah, I think if death had taught me one lesson, then it's that time is finite and it's valuable. So on to lesson number 3, which is patience. Patience is something, I've always had terrible patience most of my life. I've had probably a short temper, but one of the things it's taught me is, I just wrote this down in my show notes. It's about how you wait, how you keep peace, how you navigate the ups and downs with grace. Because as I said, I'm a super impatient person, and I think what you need to try and do is figure out what to do in the meantime. I'll give you an example of this. I came to Australia and I was still an impatient person, and I went to the airport to pick up my car. I'd booked this little tin can thing. It was like a Flintstone car, and I was supposed to get there, get an Uber there, pick up the car, drive back. Cool, hour tops. I'm at the airport 3 hours later, still waiting, still looking around, and it was in that moment that I think over a certain amount of experiences since coming to Australia and things happening along the way, is that I really learned patience. And I think the one thing that really helped me is the old sliding door theory of, I wonder what I've avoided within this 3 hours had I left straight away, that I might have run into. Could have run into a car crash, could have run someone over, could have, would have, should have. And that's the way that my mind turns now. It thinks about the potential things that maybe life has protected me from by making me wait. There's also another occurrence where this happened. I won't go into the full story, but I was waiting a bit of time and I had to go somewhere else. And I actually met 2 really cool people along the way, had 2 really cool, meaningful conversations. And had I not had to wait for a certain period of time, those wouldn't have happened. And I guess that comes again with what we're exploring with this, is being content, having being grateful for those conversations that wouldn't have happened had I had not have been delayed and slowed down. But this has really helped me with my goals as well, because I think it's one of those things, people set goals and they expect them to happen straight away, and that's what happens if we are hugely goal orientated. Is what we chase down, we tick off a goal and then we kick the can further down the road, or we move the goalposts, and we never truly are grateful for the things that we've achieved. I've just wrote this down as well because it's helped me, and hopefully it'll help you, that most goals are possible if you expand the time frame. If you are patient despite not feeling patience, that is patience. But it's not just waiting for something to happen. It's about being patient in the sense of accepting any outcome could happen and being prepared for that. So I think the big thing is, often we're happy to accept patience if we know that something positive or good is going to be on the other side of it. We're happy to be patient if we know we're going to lose the £10. We're happy and we're patient if we know that we're going to get the pay rise. We're happy and we're patient if we know that the relationship is going to turn out the way that we want it to. But what if we didn't know that? What if the outcome was a negative one? What if we didn't lose the £10? What if we lost the relationship? What if we didn't get the pay rise? Maybe wouldn't be as patient. And I think that's an important perspective of how we frame things. You've got to put the message out into the world that this is going to happen. Our beliefs are what shape us, what help us build habits. Beliefs in what we tell ourselves is so important. This is one of the things I realized when I started running a few years ago, is that when I first started running, I'd say to my mum, see you later, I'm just going for a run. And then a couple of months later, after I'd repeated running, going for longer runs, etc., I'd tell people I'm a runner. And once you label yourself that, it's super empowering that you have a positive label such as that. I mean, we've got to be careful with labels, but when you become something, it's super powerful and it ingrains those habits because you are now what you wanted to become. And there's one thing I've had to be patient with this year, it's injuries. I'm like the glass man. There's nobody gets more injured than me. So if you're listening to this and you're injured right now, trust me, it does get better. Trust me, it's going to cause you to pivot, and because I've for those who haven't seen it on my Instagram page, I've torn my meniscus, and the outcome is basically I'll need surgery if I want to do a marathon, if I want to do a high rocks again, which obviously I do want to do. So the outcome is I either need to have the meniscus shaved or it needs to be stitched. One is going to require a 3-week recovery. One is going to require a 12. And they won't know until they go in on the knee which outcome I'm going to have. So it's kind of like, you know, which cup is the ball under? We won't know until we've done it all. So it's super annoying, but I've had to be and remain patient with this. And the one thing I've pivoted on now is that I've become a good old bodybuilding bike rider or cyclist, and I've actually quite enjoyed it. I've enjoyed leaning into to jumping back on the bike again and doing something different. And I think certain things happen in life and it throws things at you and pushes you onto a path that you never knew you were going to take and could be better than you ever could have imagined. And that's the thing I think with injuries is just look at it as it's a change in direction. It's going to force you to do something different. So yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of great films on patience. The Imitation Games, if anyone's seen that, wow, what a movie! Imitation Games. If you've not seen it, get it on the to-do list, the bucket list. It's a movie about, I think it's cracking the Enigma code in the World War. Amazing film, great film. So lesson number 4 is never grow up. The power of play. This is something that I was thinking about a lot, and I spent the last 2 years of my life, and still do even now, working on the business and businesses that I own. And I've very much gotten to the notion of working to live. I think one of the things that coming to Australia has massively taught me is that I'd hear conversations in the UK, especially when I was in London, of people talking in coffee shops about business and work and what they were doing in work. And when I came to Australia, one of the things and one of the big differences that I noticed was that a lot of people were talking about what they were doing in their free time, what they were doing after work. I was like, wow, that's so interesting, because I've been around a culture of people who would talk about earnings, money, what they're buying with the money, the holidays they were buying, the luxuries, what they're doing within work, what figures they'd hit. So it was interesting to hear people talk about lifestyle outside work, and that was something that was super endearing. I guess the thing that really drove this home for me as well is that I went on a family holiday to America with kids, and kids are a wonderful thing, especially when you get to give them back. But I think I'm at a stage in life as well where I'm super pumped to be a dad one day. So apologise that I'm drinking, by the way. I've just got so hot in my room. But going away on a holiday with kids, it changes everything. It changes the way that you view things. And obviously I was going to Disney, my favourite place in the world. So having kids and being able to see it through a child's eyes was just something completely different that I'd seen before. And it made me see everything in a different light. It made everything so much more exciting. And kids are, one, super honest, but two, they don't give a shit about social media. They don't give a shit about status. They don't give a shit about what you're wearing, what you're wearing. They're just super pure. And one of the quotes I absolutely love that I heard Jimmy Carr talk about was that we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. I'm such a big believer in this. I think stress is one of the biggest killers of people. I don't know what the data is, but I'm sure someone can whip it up on how the impact of stress on the physical body is crazy. It's beyond whatever we could think of being. And the more stressed we are, the worse those physical health markers and metrics move. I think play is one of the things that we forget how to do as adults. We just completely forget how to do it. We learn so much from play when we're children, and it just completely goes out the window. And one of the things that I'm trying to do more of here and out here is just live in the playground. I'm very lucky to do that as well. I've got 2 friends, one of them being Hunter, who's the man child of the century. So he always brings a lot of fun with him. So I'm trying to be with the people who bring that light to my life as well, because it definitely puts a smile on my face. And at the end of the day, I'm just happiest when I'm not behind a laptop or on a camera. Not that I mind doing this, but it's something that I'm passionate about. But it's not. I've had the choice of doing this or going kicking a ball down the road or going for a run or play on the beach. I think I know where I'd rather be. So that was something that was really big to me. And I want to continue to try and lean into play and just having a good time and being happy, because I think like I said before, we work to live, and if we can begin to realize that there's a cheat code. To be fair, I'm going to give you a tip or a lesson. It was one of the things that I learned a couple of years ago. It was from a book called The Now Habit, and I think it was called The Reverse Diary. I'm sure there's a Now Habit Excel sheet that you can download on Google, and basically what you do is you put your diary almost in reverse. So you put all the things in the day that you want to do. So it might be, go for the run, go and play football, go and play with the kids, go down the beach, go to the shop, ride the scooter, read the book, whatever it is you get off on. Put those in first, and then put your work in around it. It's a cheat code, because you're just overlooping the work. And you trust me, I swear you will get the work done. You'll probably get it done quicker because you've got a positive outcome. So this is essentially the methodology of behaviorism. It's having a positive feedback loop. It's having a positive reinforcement after doing a block of work. So you do the block of work and you've got something to look forward to. So it makes you get the work done to a better standard and probably more efficiently. So it's called the Now Habit. Check it out. It's an Excel sheet online. I think you can download it. It talks about it a little bit more because I've probably absolutely butchered it. But it's something that definitely helped me with my work, because I was a procrastinator and having these things in where I knew I was going to do something great, especially if it's something I booked in with friends and didn't want to let them down. I'd get the work done despite circumstances. So that's number 4. Number 5, the difference between loneliness and being alone. Now, I've talked about this quite a lot on social media, and it's one of those things that's took me a good 6 months to really get to grasps with, because after being in a relationship or relationships for my full life, like I'm one of those people through life, I've never really been too single. I've always been in relationships and not spent an awful lot of time on my own. And I got these two mixed up. I got the two things of loneliness and being alone mixed up, because one of them is a state and one of them is an emotion. And one of those is chosen and one of those is forced upon us, and that is out of our control. So the feeling of loneliness is something that's out of our control. We don't choose to feel that way, but we can choose to be alone. And you can feel lonely despite being around lots of different people. And I think what I discovered is that you can feel lonely when you show up as someone else. You can feel lonely when you're pretending to be someone else, because even if people love you, they're not loving you for you, they're loving you for you being someone else. And that's what can cause you to feel lonely. And people do this on social media all the time. People will show up as an individual that they know gets engagement, they know it gets likes, they know it gets comments, and they continue to show up as this person because it's in a vicious cycle of continuing to be the person that people think they want to see. And you almost become an actor that plays on stage this part, and you continue to get clapped from the audience. And the danger is that one day you change from being you to being this actor, and you continue to be the actor through your life, and you continue to feel lonely because you're continuing to get claps. You continue to get love for somebody that you're not, and that's a dangerous place to be. And I've seen a lot happen to a lot of people. This is one of the things that I've definitely wrestled with, I think, over the past few months. And you can be around people, and you can be with friends, you can be with family, and still feel lonely because you've not chosen to be that way. And I think it's something that, even now I've chosen to be alone for a little while. I've chosen to self-develop, to be on this journey on my own. And, I've got to be careful in terms of how long I spend alone, because it, again, can be addictive to be wanting to self-develop. But having said that, I'm sure in a couple of years' time, when I've got a family and children, that I'll be wishing for this time back without screaming kids and screaming households and zero peace. And I'm sure there's a lot of maybe parents who'll listen to this today who'll be in that space as well. So I'm sure you'll be on board with that. But I think, like I mentioned before, the big thing that I've taken away is that, forever isn't a phrase that is meant for people. It's meant for memories. And I believe that's the same with this chapter that you're in now. It's not going to last forever. There's going to be a person or someone or people that will walk into your life that you just never expected to happen. And it'll happen at probably the least expected time when you're least chasing it. And that's why, if something means something to you now, then it's going to mean something to you in the future as well. And I think you've got to continue just to lean into God and yourself. And this is one of the big things that I've leaned into, is that look after your garden. Look after your garden. Don't chase the butterflies, and then the butterflies will come to you. That was a big thing, change of perspective for me when I became single, because I've spent a lot of my life being in relationships and things. So it's important. It's important as well. It's important, especially important for guys. I spoke about this a lot at my community events, because there's this loneliness epidemic going on at the moment that I spoke to a lot of guys about at the events. And most guys, on average, only have 1 to 3 close friends. And guys are very unlikely to open up to those people at the best of times, because guys, the two big things for guys is that they want purpose or need purpose, and they don't want to be a burden, which is why they won't open up to people. And this is why it's vitally important that we continue to communicate, not just if you're a guy. For a guy or a woman, it's important that you talk about things, because one of the ways that you can stop feeling lonely is by having more face-to-face conversations. And even if you don't have tons of people you can speak to, one of the best things that you can do, and one of the things that I've done over the past few months, is lean into having micro conversations. What is a micro conversation? A micro conversation is conversations with people throughout the day. It might be in the Asda, the Tesco, the coffee shop, with the barrister or the cashier, and you'll have you'll have short conversations. You'll have small talk, and that small talk accumulates over time, and it helps you build up confidence, because you then have evidence which is going to give you confidence that you can speak to people. And the second thing that you can do is to give your own opinion. Don't just be agreeable. Because having your own opinion actually really helps to stop feeling lonely. It stops you being the actor on the stage. So enjoy today. And I'm going to speak about the study that I've written down about how loneliness kills, because one of the biggest things is that we have a good community, and we nurture wealthy and healthy relationships. Number 6, change your environment if you want to change your life. Now, this one's an obvious one for me, and not everybody's going to have the ability to just get up and change country and change places. But one of the things that I want you to think about is that wherever you choose to put up and live is going to have a profound impact on the rest of your life. And even if you are still in the place that you were born, despite all else, you've chosen to be there. It's a choice. I know it doesn't sometimes feel that way, because you've got deep roots rooted wherever you are. But when you decide where your environment is going to be, where you're going to live, that is going to directly impact the relationships that you're going to have, the friendships that you're going to have, the career that you're potentially going to move into, the lifestyle that you're going to live, the wealth that you're going to have, the car that you're going to drive, how long you're going to live potentially, the food that you're going to eat. It has a profound impact. It's something that I don't think enough people really think about. And it's something that I've thought about a lot after coming here, because one of the things that change in environment definitely also does do is, if you are leading a life where you have a lot of bad habits at the moment, habits that you don't potentially want to have, it's going to remove the triggers and cues that were previously in your environment, and it's going to make you lean into developing a version of you want to become. And I know that there's this wishy-washy bullshit thing that failed people from the UK moved to Australia to try and reinvent their lives. But for me, it's really worked. It's really helped and move away from the previous triggers and cues I had that were making me become a person that I didn't want to be. And being around people who were really positive, and being around people who were really into fitness, I was really lucky to be able to be here and being around those things, which massively meant that I lent into things that were good for me and not bad for me. And, the careers and friendships are things that really impact us, and they're going to be a catalyst of a lot of things. But not everybody can move up and move states or move countries. And I'm not saying that you, for 1 minute, that you do that, because you can find a break in your day to day and your thought process by even just going on a holiday, going to Wales, going to the Lake District, going to the countryside, going to somewhere wherever you live that might be a short train fall away, to break the current system, to break the current thought process, and give you space to be creative and think about the things that you actually want. I think that's something that you can do, because even when I came here, I remember being on one of the first days on a treadmill when I came here in December, and the news was on, and I was like, oh, the news. I never watch the news. And the reason for that is I just think if the news doesn't impact me that much, I prefer to have the logic in my mind that I'm the person who can impact my life the most. And there's things that are on the TV which are just creating scarcity and moral panic, then I don't want to be a part of it. And a lot of people ask me, Ben, did you see what was on the news last week? I'm like, no, I didn't. I don't watch the news. I don't want to watch the news. And for me, it's a case of often when I just feel that I'm so far away from something for it to not have impact on my life. Whether the people think that's right or wrong, it's up to you. But it helps me have more responsibility for my life. And I had this exact same conversation with someone who's staying in the house where I am in Australia. I actually don't know what the theory is called, so we're going to call it the drowning child theory. I've heard it somewhere before, and I think it's a great way to think about it in a way. And it's that if there was a drowning child in your bathroom, would you go and save them? I'd like to think 100% of people would say yes. If there's a drowning child in the street, you could see out the window, would you save them? Again, I'd like to think 100% of people would say yes. Now, if there's a drowning child down the road, again, I would hope that most people would say yes. But the further away that child gets, the less likelihood is of you doing something. If the child was, a couple of blocks away, if the child was in a different town, in a different city, in a different country, the responsibility then changes. And this straight away gets me thinking about, I did psychology at A-level in university. I remember this study where we looked at responsibility. A lot of people think that they're safer in numbers, when in actual fact, the study proved that we're safer in situations, the less people that there are there. Because if there's 10 people in a situation where maybe you're facing something, the responsibility is then shared between 10 people, so that each individual's responsibility is 10% to do something about it and help and support you. Whereas the two people, that responsibility is split 50-50, and there's more likely that individual's going to do something rather than think, it's just it's up to him, mate. It's not my problem. You help him out. And that's the kind of thing that I think with the news is that we see these huge problems and we just turn our shoulder to them because we think it's not our responsibility. And I guess, with some stuff it is, but a lot of the time with the news is I watch it and I never find myself in a better place from watching it. I tend to try and have that logic with social media now as well. If something doesn't leave me in a better place, then I'll leave it alone. I think that's it's a good take to have with a lot of things. I think it's easy to peer into the circus and look at things and forget to leave. We get caught up with things that aren't real. So, number 7. What have I learned about love? Now, this podcast isn't going to be about love or giving relationship advice. In fact, if you're looking for relationship advice, don't ask me because I'm not the go-to guy. But I wanted to speak about my experience and things that I've learned over I guess the last year at least anyway. And one of the ways I've learned this is by I picked up a book and read it. It's called Attached by Dr. Amir Levine and Rachel S.F. Heller. And, straight out of my last relationship, I did a lot of soul searching, which is why I decided to read the book, and I wanted to figure out more things about attachment theories. Again, wanting to self-develop. I think that's natural. You want to become a better partner to the next person you're going to meet. I think one of the biggest issues is that not enough people do the work to then not take toxic traits into other relationships to become a better person. That's how a lot of relationships break down. But I want to read you 3 quotes. I want to share with you 3 quotes from the book that might wake you up today to your relationship, or for some people, situationship. Number 1, most people are only as needy as their unmet needs. Now, obviously, we all have needs that need to be met. And I guess the big thing with the way that I view it is that I want to be with someone who makes my life better, not makes my life worse. I don't want to lean into, and I have done in the past, lean into fixing people. And I want to do this. I want to do the same. I want to add value to somebody else's life. I don't want to be a hindrance or a burden to them. So I want to be able to meet their needs as well. Number 2, the trick is not getting hooked on highs and lows and mistake an activated attachment system for passion or love. Don't let emotional unavailability turn you on. And this is the kind of the same old push pull theory. It's getting drawn in and then pushed away. And I actually heard one of my favorite authors again, Mark Manson, talk about on a podcast just this week. And it's about the joy and the happiness and the love being found in the dull moments. It's not the massive highs, the massive wins, the holidays, the vacations, the big expensive bags, the lots of money spent on dinners. The joy and happiness has got to be found in those dull moments, in the small moments, in the walks to the shop, the conversations over tea, the conversations over the morning coffee, the things that happen every single day. That's where the real joy and happiness is love have got to be found, not in those roller coaster moments, because you're just chasing constant high and lows, and I don't think it's particularly healthy. So hopefully that one helps a couple of people today. Number 3, if you're still in a relationship, remember that just because you can get along with anyone doesn't mean you have to. If you're unhappy after having tried every way to make things work, chances are that you should move on. It's in your best interest to end a dysfunctional relationship rather than get stuck forever with the wrong person just because you're secure. This is basically sunk cost fallacy. I think this happens to a lot of people. It's happened to me before. It happens in lots of other areas of life, friendships, careers, living conditions, relationships. And sunk cost fallacy is basically the notion of where you've invested a lot of time and energy into something. So therefore, despite how shitty it might be, you're going to stay in it anyway. And people lose lots of time and years of your life. And this is why I've said before that it's better for something to be really painful or really shitty, because then at least it makes you leave the thing and do something about it. Because the logic's a little bit like, me walking to the barbershop on a Saturday, Googling the barbershop to then see that, oh, you know what, shit, the barbershop, sure. But I've already walked halfway here, so I might as well walk there anyway. That is just stupid logic, and nobody would do that. But we do it with our relationships, our friendships, our careers. We just stay in that same place. And, if something is more painful, then we might do something about it. It's this region beta paradox that we spoke about before, that people end up stuck in this zone of something not being bad enough for something to drive us away and open our eyes, because a lot of us lack the self-belief for us to do anything about it. A lot of us lose the confidence in those jobs and those relationships to really stand up and pull away from them. And I want you to think about that if maybe you've been there or are there at the moment. And there's a task that I want you to do. I've got a task for you. It's from a book that I've been reading this week, and I actually only did the task myself 3 days ago. And it's a self-belief task. And it's from the book, which is called Those Say You Can't, You Do, I think. I might have butchered the book completely, but the premise is there. And, okay, what I want you to do is, if you're driving, don't do this task, please. Don't die. But if you sat down listening or watching the podcast, then what I want you to do is just quickly pause the podcast. I'll wait for you. And grab a piece of pen and paper. Go and do it now. Got it? Good. So now what I want you to do is leave the pen and paper to one side for a second, and I want you to close your eyes. Go on, close them. And what I want you to do is imagine you're holding out that piece of paper. Imagine it, and it's got your name on it. You can see it in your mind. You can feel it. It's there. Your name's on the piece of paper, but only in your head. Got it? Now, what I want you to do is I want you to pause the podcast, and I want you to write your name on the piece of paper. Go and write your name right now. Good. Now, if you're following along with the task, I want you to now hold out that piece of paper in front of you where you can visibly see your name written on the paper. Now, before, it was nothing. There was nothing there but your imagination. But you visualized and then created. You brought to reality something that only existed in your head. And you can have the same impact with your own situation, relationship, and life. So what you're essentially doing there is you're imagining something, you're visualizing something. Visualization is super important and super powerful. You visualize that and then you create it. And you can do the same with, whatever a poor situation is, whether it's a job or a relationship. You can visualize how you want your life to be or how you want it not to be. And you can create the new future for yourself. And it's something that's really big and powerful. But the other thing that was really powerful for this year, and I guess something that taught me a lot about love, and it's not something I've publicly spoke about before, but for a couple of months, I worked with a love therapist, which I thought, it was never something I was going to do in my life, but I did. And one of the questions that she asked me just slapped me straight across the face. And I'm gonna ask it to you today, especially if you're in a place where there's decisions that need to be made, or there's potentially changes that need to be made, or you're just dealing with an argument. It could be anything, and it is, how do you want to remember yourself? How do you want to remember yourself from this situation in a year's time? Wow, dude, it just awoken me from decisions or things I could have said or would have said that I didn't want to be remembered for. Because when I answered her and gave her the answer to that question, it was, I want to remember myself with integrity and no regrets. I didn't want to do things or say things that I would regret. And you know what? There's that one question changed so much. I mean, you can apply it to other parts of life as well. It can be friendships or jobs or decisions that you're going to make. And, we all, I think, like to have the notion that we live life with no regrets. But at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of things in life that people probably regret. And I think having that notion in your head is only going to lead to better decisions in the future. Okay, lesson number 8, and this is just a general one, is about happiness. It's something that I thought a lot about, and I put some notes just on here. They're really brief because I think it's something that's been top of mind anyway. And I think the best way you can become happy is to observe the thoughts of your mind. And what I mean by this is that the voice that you're going to hear most in life is going to be your own. So you need to make sure that it's one that's going to lift you up and not put you down. Because I think so many of us talk to ourselves in a way that you would never talk to anyone else. If you had a friend that spoke to you the way that you do, how many friends would you actually have? You wouldn't accept it. Some people calling you a fat piece of shit and you're lazy and tired and you're crap. You just wouldn't stand for it. And I think you've got to stop standing for the way that you speak to yourself, because the way that you speak to yourself and the way that you believe in yourself, it has such a profound impact on the way that you're going to live life. And for me, the one of the people who, it just made this so simple. I love an analogy. And when I interviewed Mo Gowda, who was a CPO of Google 2 years ago, he's got a great book called Solve for Happy, the happiness equation. The happiness equation is in Solve for Happy. And it was a really simple premise that you can't hold two opposing thoughts at the same time. So if you're feeling unhappy, or if you're going through things in your head that you don't feel great about, then try and do something that injects an opposing thought, a happy thought, or something. Do something that makes you happy. This is where, for me, the happy list came in, which is just a list I have on my phone of things I can do immediately in times where I don't feel happy. There can't be things like fly to fucking Barbados. It's got to be things that I can do immediately, like songs or speak to people or actions or, some form of play. And it works because I can't hold two opposing thoughts. And that's what my tattoo is about, for those who are watching and can see. It's two sparrows flying into the head, because they're the sign of positivity. And if you put positive things in your head, it's very difficult to then be unhappy. I know that sounds super simple, and it is, and it's not always easy, but that's where self-awareness is such a big thing. But I think sometimes you've got to do what you want to do. You've got to be selfish with life and say no more often. That was a big thing for me, is saying no more and being selfish with my time, because I gave my time away so sparingly and so cheaply. And I guess that's one of the things I've learned, is to say no more and be selfish more, because ultimately, if you do more of what you want to do, you're going to be happier. And what I wanted to do more was have more adventure. I wanted to live a bit more. I wanted to expand my limiting beliefs. I wanted to expand my horizons. I wanted to expand how much of the world that I'd seen. And there's a lot of talk about how adventure is one of man's greatest forms of happiness. And when I say man, I mean anyone, man or woman. So I think having some adventure in your life is going to make you a happier person. That's why I say, taking vacation or planning time out and plan to do things that potentially weren't on the plan this year, and planning for when the plan doesn't go into plan, is just having an adventure. Because being a child and having some play is definitely the way forward. And one of the biggest forms of happiness is something that I've wrote down here, and it's something that I alluded to earlier in the podcast. It was from a study that I looked at this week. It's called the Harvard Grant Study. It's a study spanning, I think it's the longest standing study of human behavior, or studies of humans. It's 80 years old, and it followed the lives of Harvard graduates and found that factors like career achievement, wealth, and even healthy habits were less significant than the quality and strength of social connections. The core conclusion is that positive, healthy relationships are the most important factor in predicting long-term happiness, health, and success. A glimpse of any one moment in a life can be deeply misleading. Success is seen from a wide perspective of an entire life, not from any particular moment or achievement. So I think one of the things that I think they actually concluded from the study was that they looked at IQ of certain individuals, and even the IQ of someone who had the IQ of 110 versus someone who had the IQ of 150 had no significant impact on earning outcome. But one of the things that did have a significant impact on earning outcome was the level of happiness of the individual, which was associated with the health and wealth of the relationships and community that they were around. And that's why those things are so important. The key to happiness is a healthy, aging relationships, friendships. I think that's something that I've massively. Oh, I think it's something I've always been wary of. But then doing these groups with guys, building communities, forming deep connections, being around people that I want to be around, being around people that push me, challenge me to be a better person, and I'm being involved in a community. Like I said before, it's easy to feel alone these days when, we're supposed to be more connected than ever through social media, but we feel more alone because those connections aren't really true connections. They're just fake connections. They're not real conversations. And I think it's something that for happiness, it comes in the form of those relationships and how healthy those relationships are. So yeah, happiness. Number 9, lesson number 9. And this was a big one for me, which was, what do you want to want? Something I've thought so much about this year is, what do I want to want? Because we're told so often that we should want what society tells us the value. It's probably one of the ones that I've been thinking most about, because we see so much of social media and media, or speak to our friends about, we should want and value the Rolex or the car or the children. And we're influenced by everything around us at all times. We're constantly hit with a barrage of marketing material telling us, this is the next best thing, or, all these people are using such and such. But, do you really even want it? Do you really even want to work all your life or all the month to earn this, to buy that because we're told is what you should want? Or is it actually what you want to want? And I think the only way that I've really been able to figure out what do I want to want is to find out who I am. And that's a deep question to ask yourself. Who am I at the core? What do people like me for? Do people like me for what I do or who I am? That was a deep question I asked myself this year. I think once you find out like who you really are, then you can find out what you want to want. And then when you do that, it makes you a lot happier because you're doing the things that you want to do. Like I was alluding to before, you can be more selfish because you know what you want. You're not just chasing what other people want, because that doesn't really give you true happiness. So one of the things I really like to do, and I do a lot here and was doing a lot of anyway, is spending time in what I like to call non-actionable spaces. So all non-actionable spaces is spending time in places where there's no screens, there's no audio input, there's, you're not doing an aggressive workout because you need a low heart rate, you need to be able to have time to think, create. You might be doing it, a walk is fine, sit in your back garden, sit in a place where you're just looking at one thing. And it's a time where there's no external inputs, because we spend so much time around social media, things that are giving us inputs, things that are giving us things to think about. It's a place and time where there's no stimulus. It's just you thinking. It's your thoughts or your own thoughts. How often are our thoughts our own thoughts? Or how often are our thoughts direct impact or direct input from something that we're watching or listening to or looking at? This is why even spending the 5 minutes in non-actionable spaces is such a big thing, because we get an idea of what we really want to want, because we get an idea of what our own thoughts are. So spend some time in non-actionable spaces where you really get to think about your own thoughts, and you get to be creative, and you get to think about the things that you're going to do next, and you get to think about life without the layer of paint and shit that is just put and bombarded in your mind and bit with busyness all the time. Lesson number 10. I actually don't even have a lesson number 10. I was just looking through my show notes. I didn't write out number 10 because I didn't want to write a lesson there that I didn't really take, or I didn't want to write down a lesson that wasn't important that I took from this year. I didn't want to give you guys a lesson on the first podcast that I didn't really think was going to be useful. And I think one of the things I've been thinking about throughout the podcast is lesson number 10 can be maybe something that you guys are learning to share that you drop into the comments for me. It can be on Spotify, it can be on YouTube. But the other thing that's been underlying for me in this podcast is to be honest. I was on a walk the other day. This can be lesson number 10 is honesty. I think so many things can be avoided in life if you are honest, if you're truthful, if you're really truthful and you tell no lies. And I know that sounds so difficult, but I was thinking the other day about, could you die with no lies? Could you die with no lies? And how much reversing and how many honest conversations would you need to have in order for you to die with no lies? Because I think whenever you tell a lie, it's opening up another pathway to stress and stories and a lie to tell on top of a lie and a hole you've got to dig. Whereas if you just are completely honest, I think this is even the case with cancel culture as well, is that if you're completely honest and open from the start, you can never be cancelled because you're always being true to yourself. And it's a big part of what we've alluded to with the lonely chapter and feeling alone versus being lonely, with being happy, with being content within a loving relationship, within wealth that we spoke about today, with changing your environment, with play, with being patient. I think honesty is a key underlying notion from all these. If you start with honesty, if you're faced with a situation right now of what should I do? Should I tell the person? Should I do the thing? How does this conversation go? How does the interview go? How do I, unravel the situation that I'm in? Whatever lies you've told so far is to be honest from now. Because you will find yourself in way less difficult situations with way less problems and a lot better people around you, and much more respected if you are brutally honest and tell the truth. I think the truth unlocks a lot of things. I think the truth removes you from a lot of stress. I think if you can think about that notion of what would it be like to die with no lies, I think it'd feel a lot less stressful. I think you'd probably feel a lot less weight. I think you would carry a lot less weight. And there's a lot of weight that we all carry through life and we all carry with us due to the fact that we've had to tell more and more lies from, it's like planting a seed and watching it develop. You've got to continue to water it with more lies for it not to die. So yeah, number 10 is honesty and truthfulness. And there's definitely going to be times where there's a lot of things for me to unpack in my life, but I think one of the things moving forward for me is to be as honest and truthful as possible. Is a key to definitely being a lot happier. So, I mean, guys, hopefully you've enjoyed this first episode. It's been a solo waffle for me, and the point of this podcast to start with is that it's going to be a solo podcast. And I think when I was thinking about even recording this podcast for the past however long I've been thinking about it for, which has been a long time, but in the build up to it, I've been nervous about releasing this episode. I've been nervous about doing this podcast. I felt really uncomfortable about the thought of sitting down and speaking to you guys or speaking to the camera into the mic again. And I knew it was the right decision, because when something feels uncomfortable and there's a certain level of resistance there, it's probably the thing that you should be doing. And, episode 1 or the first time you record the video, the first time that you do the thing is always going to be the worst time that you do it with the least amount of people watching. So mess up, fuck things up, get things wrong in a time where there isn't lots of eyes on you, where there isn't lots of pressure on you, because then the more that you develop that skill, by the time that there is a lot of people watching, you're going to be pretty damn good at it. So hopefully, guys, this was a pretty good episode. There's some nuggets of information to take away. If you've got to this far through it, I massively appreciate you tuning in and listening. And again, I hope that you tune back in next week. But the thing that would really, really mean a lot to me as I go through this journey is that you subscribe to wherever you listen to the podcast, and also you tell other people about it, or you send it to other people. It'd be a great personal help for me and it'd mean a lot to me. And please drop any feedback in the comments. I'm still developing the set and what the visuals of this looks like, and still developing the audio. It's going to get better with time, but I'd really appreciate your guys' feedback as well, and things that you'd like to see, and potentially people that you'd like to see on the podcast in the future. But like I said, the first few episodes at least are going to be me and you just having conversation. Hopefully this podcast brings you to a voice of someone that's going to be in your corner. So this is Unhinged Curiosity, and I've been Ben Holden. Thank you for listening this week. Goodbye.